Hello everybody, welcome back to Speak English with Joe. In today's lesson, we are diving into comparative adjectives. Have you ever wondered how to compare two things in English? Whether it's about size, speed, age, or anything else, comparative adjectives are essential for making comparisons. In this lesson, I'll show you how to form them, use them, and highlight some common mistakes with comparative adjectives. By the end of this lesson, you will be comparing things confidently and accurately. So let's get started. What are comparative adjectives? Comparative adjectives are used to compare two nouns. They often end in ER or are preceded by the word more. The structure typically follows the pattern subject followed by verb, then comparative adjective, before than, and finally object. For example, John is taller than Mark. Taller is comparative adjective used to compare the height of John and Mark, showing that John has more height than Mark. 2. The new car is cheaper than the old one. The comparative adjective cheaper is used here to compare the cost of the new car to the old one, suggesting that the new car has a lower price than the old one. Now that we know what comparative adjectives are, let's look at the rules for forming them. Rule number 1. One-syllable adjectives. For adjectives with one syllable, add ER to the end. For example, tall is one syllable. In the comparative, we add ER, which becomes taller. For instance, Sarah is taller than her brother. Taller shows that Sarah has more height compared to her brother. Fast is one syllable. In the comparative, we add ER, which becomes faster. For instance, this car is faster than that one. Faster explains that this car has a higher speed compared to that one. Rule number 2. One-syllable adjectives ending in E. Just add R to the adjective. For example, nice is one syllable, which ends in E. In the comparative, we only add R, which becomes nicer. For instance, the new teacher is nicer than the old one. Nicer shows that the new teacher is more pleasant or kind compared to the old one. Large is one syllable, which ends in E. In the comparative, we just add R, which becomes larger. For instance, The new apartment is larger than the old one. Larger indicates that the new apartment has more space compared to the old one. Rule number 3. One-syllable adjectives ending with a consonant-vowel consonant. Double the final consonant and add ER. For example, big ends in consonant-vowel consonant. B is a consonant, I is a vowel, and G is a consonant. In the comparative, we double the G and add ER, which becomes bigger. For instance, this apple is bigger than that one. Bigger compares two apples, showing that one apple has more size. Hot is one syllable, which ends in consonant-vowel consonant. H is a consonant, O is a vowel, and T is a consonant. In the comparative, we double the T and add ER, which becomes hotter. For instance, the weather today is hotter than yesterday. Hotter compares the temperature, implying that today's weather has more heat compared to yesterday. Rule number 4. Two-syllable adjectives ending in Y. Change the Y to I and add ER. For example, happy has two syllables and ends in Y. In the comparative, we change the Y to I and add ER, which becomes happier. For instance, she is happier now than before. Happier shows that her mood or state of happiness is greater now compared to before. Busy has two syllables and ends in Y. In the comparative, we change the Y to I and add ER, which becomes busier. For instance, my schedule is busier this week than last week. Busier indicates that there are more tasks or engagements this week compared to last week. Rule number 5. Adjectives with two or more syllables. Use more before the adjective instead of adding ER. For example, beautiful has 3 syllables. In the comparative, we use more before beautiful, which becomes more beautiful. For instance, this painting is more beautiful than the other. More beautiful compares the beauty of two paintings, showing that one painting has a higher degree of beauty than the other. Interesting has 4 syllables. In the comparative, we use more before interesting, which becomes more interesting. For instance, This book is more interesting than the movie. More interesting compares the level of interest between a book and a movie, indicating that the book captures more interest than the movie. Some adjectives have irregular comparative forms that do not follow the standard rules. These must be memorized as they don't adhere to any particular pattern. For example, good in the comparative becomes better. For instance, his performance was better than expected. Better compares his actual performance to the expected performance, meaning that his actual performance was superior. Bad in the comparative becomes worse. For instance, the weather today is worse than yesterday's. Worse compares today's weather to yesterday's, showing that today's weather is less favorable. Let's look at some common mistakes people make with comparative adjectives. 1. Incorrect formation. For example, it's incorrect to say, she is more tall than her sister. That is incorrect because tall is one syllable adjective, and in the comparative we add er, which becomes taller rather than using more. Therefore, the correct sentence would be, she is taller than her sister. 2. Using double comparatives. For example, it's incorrect to say, he is more happier now. That is incorrect because happy already forms its comparative by changing the y to I and adding er, making it happier. Using more is redundant. Hence, the correct sentence would be, he is happier now. 3. Irregular comparatives. For example, it's incorrect to say, this task is gooder than the last. That is incorrect because adjective good has an irregular comparative form, which is better and not gooder. Therefore, the correct sentence would be, this task is better than the last. Congratulations on following the lesson up to this point. You've learned how to use comparative adjectives to make comparisons, rules for forming them, and some common mistakes to avoid. Now, let's put your knowledge to the test with this quick quiz. Give it a try and leave your answers in the comment section. If you enjoyed this lesson, please like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more grammar tips. Thanks so much for watching, and see you again in the next lesson. Goodbye.